Hello, students. Myself Joshi Disha, and I warmly welcome you on behalf of Sri Shivsha College of Commerce, Management, and Computer Education, and it is managed by Jain Citizens Education Society. So, students, in the last session, we had studied types of production function. As stated earlier, today we are going to start short-term production. In that, we are going to study law of diminishing returns. Before starting the topic, as I had stated earlier, you people are aware about short-term production that we had studied in nature, short-term production function. In that, I had cleared that short term production means whatever we are doing, as the name itself suggests, it is for a shorter period of time. We generally won't make any changes, but if circumstances arises, we change only one factor of production or only one input. The rest of the factors of production are kept constant. So we are going to study this in detail. We are also having idea of law of diminishing returns. What was in that? In that it was when we are using more inputs till we are getting less output. It is called law of diminishing returns. Still we are going to study this in detail. If a firm increases any variable input or factor of production and keep the factors constant, what changes will take place during short term has been examined here. When we are changing only one input and keeping the rest inputs constant, what happens then? That we are going to study today. Now, law of diminishing returns. If the firm keep all factors such as law, capital, machines, etc. constant and change one of the factors, the proportion of labor, we can know what changes will take place in the quantity of production through widely accepted law in the field of production called the law of non-proportional output. As stated earlier, we are changing only one factor of production or input. That is, we are keeping, here it has stated that what are kept constant, that is law, capital and machineries are constant, but we are changing one factor, that is the proportion of labors. We are changing the quantity of labor. We can know that changes will take place, but obviously labor, when we increase labor, the production increases. At the same time, when we are decreasing the number of labors, the production decreases. We can know what changes will take place in the quantity of production through widely accepted law in the field of production. That is called the law of non-proportional output. So we are changing only one factor, that is labor, and keeping rest of the factors constant, that are law, capital and machineries. In this process, production increases in the beginning. So what we need to examine or we need to study is that by doing this, when we are doing this, that keeping other inputs constant and only changing one factor, then what actually happens? So in this process, production increases in the beginning. Production is increasing in the beginning, that is termed as increasing returns. Then there is no change in the production, means it remains constant, that is constant returns. And then it begins to diminish or decrease, that is diminishing returns. So in the beginning we are increasing the production, so there are increasing returns. Then at some point of time it becomes constant, so that are constant returns, and then gradually it starts decreasing, that is diminishing returns. That is the reason why this law is called the law of variable proportion. Variable, as I stated, means changeable, changing. Correct? So it is changing. Firstly, it was that we were increasing, right? In the production, we are increasing the amount. Later on, it is becoming constant, and then gradually it starts decreasing. This law explains the relationship between proportion of variable factors or inputs and quantity of production during the short term. But obviously, it is showing the relationship between the factors or inputs and their quantities. When we are using more inputs, we are getting, at some point, we are getting more returns. Then we are using inputs, we are not getting returns. Then we are using more inputs, but still we are getting less out, output. So this is relationship with the inputs and the quantities further of that further quantity of production during the shorter period of time. This law shows that if all other factors of production are kept constant and if any one of the variable factor is increased in proportion gradually. After a certain limit, the production will increase at a slower rate in proportion to increase inputs. This means that marginal physical productivity of variable input will diminish. This law is called the law of diminishing returns. In a certain point of time, when we are using more inputs, we are getting more returns. In some, we are using less inputs, still we are getting more output. But when we are using more inputs, still not getting that much output, means lesser outputs, then it is known as law of diminishing returns. In short-term production function, above mentioned assumptions of changing quantities of production are operative. Now let us examine these changes of short-term production with the help of an illustration and figure. In other words, let us get explanation regarding the example and figure of diminishing returns. So now we are going to study the assumptions of for the law of diminishing returns. So, what are the assumptions? Number one, there is no change in production function. We have to keep these things in mind that when we are using these assumptions, then and then only we can apply this law of diminishing returns. Otherwise, if we are not using these assumptions, we cannot apply the law of diminishing returns. So, here it comes. Number one, there is no change in production function. It is assumed in this law that there is no change in the method of production. Means here it is stated that method of production is kept constant. We do not need to change technology, or we can say structure, or we can say method of production. Method of production means in when it comes to increasing or decreasing or whatever we are doing, we need to keep our method of production constant. The use of technology is never changed. If there is improvement in the method of production, the production may increase and not increase after certain limit. In such case, the law of diminishing returns does not apply. But naturally, it is a common concept that when we are changing the use of technology, it may increase or decrease the production. So we do not need to do this over here. We are keeping the method of production function constant. So then and then only we can apply the law of diminishing returns. So first assumption is there is no change in production method. Second is input units have equal quality. Inputs in production function, if we are using 5 inputs, that is A, B, C, D and E, then we have to keep this all inputs of same quality. Whenever quality of any one input is differing, then but naturally the results that we are going to achieve are going to differ. So it is stated over here that the quality of inputs of each and every input are going to be kept as same as equal. In production, all the variable inputs employed have equal quality. Such an assumption lies at the root of the law. If the input units have different qualities, this law does not apply, as some inputs may be of better quality while the other may be of longer quality. But naturally, if we are using 5 inputs, some may be having of better quality and other may be of longer quality. Means it is not that much good, but it is durable. It is we can use it for a longer period of time. So these are different qualities of inputs. But what we have to do over here, we have to use equal quality of inputs. Then and then only we can apply this law of diminishing returns. Number third is factor combination is variable. It is assumed that after keeping other factors constant, the proportion of only one factor is changed. As stated earlier, we had agreed to a point that only one input is changing, rest of the others are constant. So, this means that factor combination is variable, means it is variable, that is changeable. Suppose there are one machine plus 5 laborers produce 4 quintal sugar. Here it is given an example that if we are having one machine, 5 laborers, then we are producing 4 quintal sugar. But one machine plus 4 or 6 laborers are combined. The factor combination changes, and if zero production takes place, this law does not apply because in this condition, factor combination remains invariable. So, but naturally, when we are changing number of laborers, it is definitely going to affect the production. Machine is kept constant, but here there is change in laborers. The laborers figure is 4 or 6. In the example, we were having one machine plus 5 laborers and we were producing 4 quintal sugar. But here we are having one machine plus 4 or 6. We are not using 5. We are using rather 4 or 6. Laborers are combined and then the factor combination changes, but naturally then production of sugar is changing, and if zero production takes place, this law does not apply because in this condition factor combination remains invariable. So these were the assumptions of law of diminishing returns, and we have, by assuming this only, we can apply the law of diminishing returns. So this is the law of diminishing returns. In the next session, we are again going to see the example with figures, and we are going to study the diagram. So thank you, students, for today's session. I hope you are understanding the concepts. Go through this and study it well. So thank you, students.